we'll have our Q&A. So now we'll hand it over to Marian. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hi, I'm Marian DeSouza-McAllister. I'm a creative director, graphic designer, fashion media designer. I guess I'm a jack of many trades, or Jane of many trades. I'm based in Seattle, but I'm originally I was born in India, and then I lived in New Zealand for a long time, and I moved to New York, where I was in the design field for about 10 years. I recently relocated to Seattle, and I've been delving more into the design and tech industry here. So that's sort of been my journey. I also own and operate a studio that I use to find clients, and I do web design for them. I do a lot of logo, branding, marketing. Yeah, just a range of stuff.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you here and just hear about all the stories that you have to share with us today. So why don't you start off by telling us about your why? How did you get on design, and what did that journey look like for you?
Sorry, did you say why did I get into design? It was a little hard to hear you there. Sure,
That's
yeah.
I can repeat myself. Yeah, and how did that journey look like for you after getting into design?
Yeah, I mean, I started out very, ideally thinking I could be a fashion designer, not really understanding many of the social issues and the body issues that existed, like for women of color, for women that are larger. It was all very focused towards tall, thin, blonde, white women. And so eventually I sort of gave up on the fashion dream, or it sort of morphed into a more global interest in graphic design, where there's more than just fashion. It's designing products, it's designing for marketing, for events, for campaigns, making there's a lot of different hats that you can wear when you're in graphics. And then I've also explored video and photography and animation and illustration. So that was sort of my journey. That was my why. But I think the reason that I really kept pursuing it, even though it's hard, is because I feel like if you give up, then you're not really going to be able to ever be part of the change. And the only way to stick with it. So that's sort of why I am where I am.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a great point. Just being a part of the change to make the change. Love that. So we would love to learn about your current role too, what drew you and what are the many things you're responsible for?
Sure, yeah. I mean, currently I am a freelance graphic designer and web designer. Like I said earlier, I have a studio. I've been using my studio more as a platform for social issues and campaigns of that nature, or branding for specific clients, where I'll also do corporate work, and I'll also work as a freelancer for other corporations. But this has been one of my side hustles that's now become also a really big passion of mine. So I think as a graphic designer and a creative director and someone who has worked in the design field for a very long time, I didn't want to just be making pretty things, making really beautiful marketing, just being a very stale member of the design community. I wanted to see what else was out there. And I think that's why I've kept my company as well as kept freelancing. I like the idea of being able to use that as a tool, because I have a lot more freedom to help people from communities that are otherwise ignored when you work in a more corporate field.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So could you share some examples of where you yourself might have faced biases or found yourself at a disadvantage because of who you are or what you might look like? And what did you do about it? What gave you the courage to continue?
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying, fashion is obviously way more of a frivolous industry in that sense. And so, those stories are far more expected. But the more I worked even with marketing teams, with design teams, product development teams, I started to realize once again, there's a very general interest in only helping a very small and slim amount of people within our large world and our large community. There's a very small amount of interest in helping and increasing the revenue and increasing the lifestyle and the value of a very small amount of people. It wasn't really looking at women with disabilities, dark-skinned women, fat women, people in the men and women who are transgender. All of those communities were just completely ignored by design. It's like, oh, don't they need products too? Don't they need beautiful clothes? Don't they need beautiful fashion? Don't they deserve fancy furniture? I feel like everything that's being designed was being designed very much with one person in mind. And that made me feel really sad as a creative, right? Because I'm like, how can we ever be excited as young people of color if everything is just made for skinny white people? Like, what is my purpose here? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? And so, like, I worked for companies like Ralph Lauren and Lululemon, and I was disappointed that even though there is this like impression of body positivity and this impression of like, we believe in spirituality, we believe in positivity, we believe in a community. It was only for a very healthy small community of able-bodied white people. And that was disappointing. And I was like, I want to make products and I want to be involved in design and make posters and do all the things that help other people, not just the already able-bodied members of the community. I myself feel like, many opportunities that we as dark-skinned women or women of color are denied is like, promotions, areas where you have great ideas, but then nobody listens to you. Or like, for example, I sometimes would try to add more diversity into marketing by adding more people of color. And I would have my white bosses say like, no, no Black people. Take all the Black people out of that publication. Those kinds of things scared me. And I think that those are the things that I would say really made me question, like, how do I become part of a change? So that's definitely been some of the struggles. And I think what's led me to keep pursuing, as much as I love working in a corporate environment, keep pursuing a studio that allows social change, that allows for a space to campaign for the more oppressed members of the community.
Mhm. Yeah, that is very real, and I could definitely empathize with that too as a woman of color. Um, on a contrary, like, can being a minority in tech be an advantage, and how so?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can, depending on the people that you surround yourself with, right? As a corporation, even, or as a friend group, or as a company or a startup, or what have you. I think that a lot of major corporations are definitely far more aware of it now, and they have a lot of training and a lot of like education in place. So it can be a benefit in that sense because, now more than ever, you have visibility from people that previously didn't understand your struggles. So from that side of it, yes, absolutely. But like I have a friend here in Seattle who works in tech and she's of Indian origin, and she jokingly says like, it's great until you're working in a room full of Indian guys. And then, then you wonder if it really is a good thing that you're a woman of color. So there's also that side of the spectrum, right? And I feel like that's a really valid issue as well, where like the patriarchal side of it influences us irrespective of whether we're white or Black or brown or what have you. Um, so yeah, that's where I feel like it's at for me. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think we've like seen that a lot. So like speaking of the tech industry, like what do you think are some of the biggest systemic barriers are as of the present day? And are any of these becoming more prevalent day by day?
I actually wrote down some of the things that I felt were important. I had a great example where I feel like, and this applies, I think, to whether you're in tech, whether you're a product manager, whether you're director, you're creative, you're a developer, whatever your industry, because it's really about dismantling a system that values, some people and then devalues other people. That's kind of like the institutional change and like the main brainwash you need to do to yourself. Like you need to remember that all the time. Like my example is like, for example, like companies using body positivity, right? But a lot of the time they include in their campaigns bodies that are already deemed conventionally attractive, bodies that are already pretty. And so that's sort of like a useless perspective for us, because we're trying to create more space, we're trying to create more positivity, and we want to do it in a way where it's about health and beauty, but it's not like meeting some arbitrary standard. It's meeting a standard that includes everyone. And I think that sort of applies to tech too. Like when you're working in a group of people and you have concepts and you have products that you're trying to create, are you thinking about everybody? Are you thinking about people with disabilities, women of color, dark-skinned women of color, fat women, women, transgender men and women, all the LGBTQ plus women of color, all the people that nobody thinks about? Like I think, yeah, that's where I'll end it.
Mhm. Yeah, there are so many groups that go unnoticed. And I didn't have this question listed down, but you said you had some experience working in previous clothing brand and other brands. Like,
Yeah.
what kind of things did you like notice going on there?
I mean, it's a really historically racist, and like it's a very institutional issue where like I was saying, the body sizing and body shaping is very much based on a Western model, and it has been and it continues to be for most of it, for most companies at large. And I think there's definitely newer brands who are more interested in sustainability and inclusivity. They're more niche labels, though they have their own mission statements and their own structures. But overall, like the brands that everybody knows about and hears about, they're not necessarily supporting all of the women and men and everyone in between that needs supporting. They're just looking at like, for example, when I worked at Ralph Lauren, a lot of the people that worked there were of Asian heritage, people of color, and not all, like the ideal Ralph Lauren model. But these are the clothes we're making, like we have no actual relationship to it. Yet this is what we're doing day in and day out. And it's for a very small percentage of the market, if you actually think about it. Like, sure, there is a 1% of people that are wealthy and want to play polo and want to buy those clothes and pay those prices, but you're also ignoring all of the Asian money, all of the Black money that you could be capitalizing on. And conversely, it's become this status symbol where people of color will then buy those products because they think that in some way it helps them assimilate more. So there is like a really racist undertone to the fashion industry that needs to be dismantled, right? And there are lots of brands doing it. There's lots of brands but you have to go find them, or you have to dedicate a life to like thrift shopping. So you're dismantling that system, right?
Yeah. I think we can all think of like some brands where we go and like the clothes aren't just like made for us.
Yeah.
So like in the future, like what do you think like the fashion and the tech industry are going to be at? And what about like the people who are looking into getting into design and are from underrepresented communities?
Sorry, could you repeat that? It was a little hard to hear you.
Yeah, for sure. I can be a little loud. So what do you think the future looks like for the many minorities and underrepresented people who are getting like thinking of getting into tech or fashion, and even like becoming a designer?
I mean, I hope that I like to believe that it's really good. I think that now companies are more aware, but I think as individuals, if we try harder to stand up for what we believe in and to reiterate our rights, then you don't give power to any of the oppression that you might usually face. That's one thing that I think is more accepted now. And I think that as a result of that, there is a lot more people who are able to find more opportunities in whatever industry they seek. But in general, I feel like the numbers are still pretty low. We can definitely have higher, like it would be cool for it to be 50-50, where you have like a 50% people of color and then 50% white people in your corporation. And some companies do strive for that, but I think until all companies have that, then we haven't really achieved that goal.
Definitely. And when you were thinking of, like, I guess, starting your own projects that work towards diversity and inclusion, like, how did you go about that?
I have like a checklist. I mean, I have a slide that I included in your slides here as well that I can
Mhm.
share, but I have like a bunch of like a list that I've been making since I started to become more aware of the issues that I saw, so that I can, like, as one individual within my area, my community, my industry, be different and be a little bit more progressive. I think that you have to create opportunities wherever you can. Like if you see an opportunity to give a Black woman a leg up versus someone that's a friend that you know that isn't a Black woman, or whatever the situation, I think that that's an example where you can decide, like, okay, instead of being nepotistic or just social, I can do this and make an opportunity for someone, even if I don't know them that well. I think decolonizing your body, decolonizing your job, decolonizing your mind, that's really important, whether you're a designer, whatever you're doing, because that is the only way for you to really become more encompassing of all and become more aware of all. Always identify industrial complexes, whether it's beauty, whether it's confidence, whatever it is, because things that are historically structured are being used against most of us. Disrupt workplace systems that have covertly benefited the patriarchy. You know, like there's so many, no matter where you work. I think that feminism nowadays likes to think that it's inclusive, but it's not necessarily a space that's inclusive of, like I said, dark-skinned women, women with disabilities, fat women of color who identify as LGBTQ plus, trans men and women. Like, how do we change that? My question is always, how do I change that with my work every day? What project I'm taking on? Obviously, it's not possible if you're working with a corporate client, but if you're doing it with someone that you know has the potential and the passion for that, then that's something worth exploring. Always creating space and support, no matter how small or large the group or the amount of people involved are. I'm always looking for more sustainable models for my projects. I'll try to like include people with less experience or people that don't necessarily have a lot of education versus people that do, just because I feel like that's one way you can become more inclusive in a very important way. Also, don't be afraid to impart your knowledge and mentor people, even if you don't think you have a lot of skills to offer. Everybody has something to offer. Disruption is good, but if you're a person of color, my big thing, and this is not me, this is from the lady that started the Me Too movement. I follow her, and she said a really important thing, which is if you're a woman of color, it's more important to put yourself first and decide where you are in your journey. Like, are you comfortable with your trauma and your struggles in your body, in your throat, in your mind? Check in with yourself. Like, what do you still have to do? What do you still have to process? And then tweet and share and be on social media later. Um, Never stop listening to untold stories. That's a big one for me. Whether it doesn't matter what I'm doing with my work, like I'll always try to do something for free if I know it's an important project, but they don't have a lot of money. Don't be afraid to do things for free. If it's something you care about, if it's something you're passionate about, and if it's for the community and their benefit, then do it. Um, yeah, identify groups that are systemically and historically excluded. Coming up with daily small actions to help. I'm always looking for ways to spread the wealth around, like whether it's social, educational, or even financial. I know that's harder for everyone, but there's ways to share your social wealth, especially if you're a white person, especially if you're white passing, especially if you have all those opportunities, right? Review whether your project is representative of all the relevant audiences, because when we work in big companies, we have a marketing department, we have a lot of directives, and that's where we lose sight of all of these goals because you're just doing it with a very tunnel vision. Never let your marketing teams or your bosses like whitewash or rainbow wash or pink wash a project, which is like attaching yourself to a movement without truly understanding and embodying its values, right? Like you see so many companies just supporting LGBTQ plus, supporting women, all of this stuff, but it's really just you're slapping a rainbow on your branding and you're saying you care, but you don't, right? There are companies that do care, but then there are also companies that are just rainbow washing themselves. And that's something we don't want to be a part of because that's fake inclusivity and it's completely useless. Social media is great, but it is not as inclusive and meaningful as one-on-one in-person community outreach. That's a big one for me. And that's something I hope I can continue to always remember to do, no matter where I am in my career. And that's, I think, something that we can all do to be more inclusive.
Yeah, thank you so much. Those are all great tips. Alex,
Sorry, I
it's
feel like
so
that was a
important.
very long answer.
No, not at all. We all loved it. Yeah. You said there was a slide you wanted to show us. Would you like to take us through that?
Here it is, voila. You can ignore the graphic because I think in general, this is a great way to think about how to design products, how to develop, how to make whatever it is, or start whatever it is. There is no such thing as neutral design because all of the design we've seen is basically for the person on the screen. And how do we dismantle it is by not always thinking about this person, thinking about everyone outside of this person, the college educated, English speaking, Christian, non-disabled, heterosexual, cisgender, citizen from a colonizing country, white or white passing, right? This is what everything is designed for, made for. And it's like that's all we cared about for so long. But now we have to start thinking about how, and we are, I'm not saying that we're like stuck in the 20s or the 30s, but as each individual member who cares about these values, this is something to remember always and to fight for and to think about when your bosses are like, no, 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 we don't need to be that liberal right now, or we can just take that out. Like that's, we'll save that for AAPI month. We'll save that for International Women's Day, like stuff like that.
This is so powerful. Like, this is great. I think I'll be sharing this in the blog post too.
Yeah, you should.
Mhm. So yeah, like that's almost all for like my questions. The last final question I have is that do you have this one best piece of advice you like to share for people from minority backgrounds who are looking to build like a career in tech and design? Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't let the haters, first of all, haters gonna hate, just ignore them all. um, I think that as women of color, we have a lot of people always telling us what we should do, what we can do, and what we shouldn't do. Ignore all of that and decide for yourself what you want to do, for yourself what you can do, and for yourself what you're good at doing. Always keep learning new skills because I think as people of color, we have been denied for so long that we're not even really aware of the resources and things that are available in the world because we just haven't known about them, right? And if we talk to each other about it, like this is amazing because it's a bunch of women just chatting with each other about the important issues. Stuff, platforms like this are so important for that change because we can all relate to these situations. We can all aspire and work from these situations. And I feel like that's awesome. That's the most beautiful part.
Yeah, truly. I love having conversations like these, and I really hope like the impact of like these like grow over time in like the upcoming years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all for our Q&A. I will now open it up to everyone in the audience. If you would like to unmute and ask Marian a question or just drop something in the chat, we can go through them one by one.
Yeah, thank you so much, Palak, and thank you so much, Marian. What you're working on is really great, and we need to have more people like you who think like you and who are the change makers. So, my question here really is we're talking about fighting the biases in the society, what about the biases that we have inherently in us? Because as a person of color, when I'm a brown person, I have been raised with this, thought with, or for the lot of for the most part of my life that, okay, fairer skin color is better, because my mother would say to me, don't go under the sun, you will not get married otherwise, if you get darker. So these are some things which even children or the people of color, or people who are fighting with this, know, or maybe imbibe in themselves even before they know that this is wrong, or this is this we should fight for. So before taking an external view, how do we counter the biases that we have inside of us? How do we target this blind spots that we may have against each other? We may always, like, for Indians especially, it's like the fairer you are, the better you are. Like, we have this multi-billion-dollar business of fairness creams, and girls, they themselves, they feel inferior. So how do we counter those biases? Like how do we start from inside?
Thanks, Rita. I mean, that's a really awesome question and a really important point, hey, like, especially for those of us that grew up with proper Asian mothers, staying out of the sun was like part of your religion, right? Like, you would get yelled at and punished for it. I remember getting slathered in Fair and Lovely. As you can see, did nothing. Maybe gave me skin cancer, TBD. But other than that, like that's when I think the point that I was saying earlier, and I'll hit you guys up with the link to her Instagram, the lady that started the Me Too movement. Like, as women of color, we have so much trauma from all of these moments, these experiences, like the ones you're mentioning. Sure, it's our parents, our friends, our society that we grew up in, but that in of itself is such a huge thing to try to dismantle, right? I find that reading and looking at what other women of color who are social activists are doing helps me process it, because it gives me the words and the understanding that I've been lacking. Some people find therapy useful. For me, I find talking and listening and stuff like this helps a lot too, because this is one way where we can all chat about it and we're all like, oh my God, yeah, that happened to me too. Like, so that's one way you do it. But remember, like, as much as it's important for you to have those biases, work through it within your own body and your own self first, because the trauma that it causes you is going to hold you back from being able to truly be liberated and as open-minded as you want to be. And, just being aware is the easiest thing. Like, be okay with hearing you're small-minded, you're being racist, you're being sexist, because as you said, we grew up with these crazy, unreal, well, not crazy, they were realistic for that time and place, and that's the culture. But here and now, we can see what works and what doesn't. And in that sense, like, all you can do is try. I'm going to give you a couple of links. Yeah, like, there's a few women out there that I feel really try. And, as Indians, especially, I think if you're a person of Indian origin, there is a lot of brown and brown hate, right? Like, there's always has been, and it's very hard. And that's why I always specify when I say dark-skinned women of color. I'm really not here for the white passing women of color, right? Like, because they don't have to deal with that. Oh, did someone say Yellow? Oh, yeah. Okay. Hi, Yellow. I don't know if she's on here. Oh, there she is. Cool. Yeah. Does that answer your question, or do you feel like that was a sufficient enough response?
Yeah, it answers my question. Thank you so much, Marian. Thank you.
No worries. No worries.
Yeah, I think there was a question in the chat by Yell. If you know her, feel free to just answer. Do you want me to read it out for you? I think you're muted.
I said, I'm all good. I found it.
Okay, sounds good.
No worries. No worries. Enjoy your dinner. So yeah, asked us, can you tell us which communities you found where you feel most comfortable to share your work in? I found you in Art Girl Army. Would love to find a way to work together and lift each other up. Yeah, absolutely. When you're ready. I remember we tried to hook up once in Brooklyn over like a loft creative thing, a workspace, but it never worked out. Maybe there'll be another opportunity in the future. I'm like, Our Girl Army is one of the great places to go. I think communities like this, like it's hard. Facebook has been good. It's funny and ironic how Facebook is a place with an incredible concentration of racism and all of these issues, but it's also been a great place for me to find like communities of women in tech and design and creativity. And so Facebook in that sense has been like a double-edged sword. I've been trying to read more and find more women that I feel I can relate to. Because I think, and that goes back to what Rita asked earlier, where one way that I feel more safe and more like I'm healing is finding other women to talk to about some of the issues that I've gone through. Because I think the more you talk about it, the more you realize like there's a lot of people, a lot of women that have these issues and these feelings. They just don't know how to express them, and they've just like squashed them. That's all of us, and that's all of our trauma, right? Like as women, we have to learn to just let go of it and be okay with it and talk about it instead of just being quiet and getting on with it and keeping it moving. Trying to think of what other communities. It's been hard since the pandemic, I'll be honest. Like it's not been easy to find places. Like when I lived in Brooklyn, I really enjoyed doing art markets or going to networking events with women in business, places like that, because I found that really like actually, even though I'm not really that heavily into business, I think we all kind of are in some way. And I found going to networking events with women in business was really helpful because it's really awesome to see these women who are just leading in the finance industry and all of these like male dominated areas. I found that really inspiring. And I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, I feel like that's been PM Dojo has been cool. Like this is awesome. Meeting all of these ladies has also really been a really awesome experience.
Yeah, same here. Great answer. Any other questions from anyone? Feel free to just unmute or drop anything in the chat.
Yeah, drop it in the chat. I gave us a lot of time for Q&A. I just assumed people would have a lot of questions to ask me. I'm gonna share some links that I had. I'm just gonna drop them in the chat box over here.
Go right ahead. If you would also like to drop your socials, so if people want to connect with you later, you can do that too.
Sure, yeah. So first I'll give you mine.
So if there are no other immediate questions, I guess we can close off for today. You guys can connect with Marian. Oh, go ahead, Rita. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just waiting. Okay. So,
Mhm.
like we talked about encountering our own biases, like in these communities where we are most of us are educated women. When we are struggling at a level where we are aware, at least we are aware of these biases that exist. But like people, or especially women who do not have access to resources, who do not even have access to internet or basic services, basic necessities of life, and who are going through these challenges which they are not even aware of. They take it for like they take it as a part of life. They don't even know that, okay, they are struggling with this is a trauma that is being caused to them. How can we help them? How in the like I believe we are still in a better position. We still educated, but we should try to use our education or the resources we have to help such women to at least tell them that, what is going on is wrong with them. So how can we reach out to them, and what is the best platform, to help them out?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that you can dissect that, right? Like everyone has different resources that they can help with. Like for me, it's providing my art as a social service. For you, it might be creating code to help a charity put up a website. And it could be a women's charity or a women's school that's trying to create more education for women in India or in some country that's underdeveloped. There's different ways to do it. It's definitely hard. Like during the pandemic, I started making masks during lockdown out of sheer boredom. But then I realized this is a way that I can actually generate income, and I don't need the money in that sense. But I know that these $5, $6, $25 a mask could go to help, could be converted into a large sum of money for someone in a different country. So then I started to talk to some of my relatives that live in India, and one of them said, "Oh, like I live across from an orphanage in Bangalore. I take groceries over there for the little kids. And now because of the pandemic and everything else, orphanages are obviously in India not a high priority." So then I decided like, okay, I'm going to sell these masks in America and Venmo you whatever money I make, and you're going to convert it into rupees where it's thousands. And then you're going to take that money and go grocery shopping and give it to the kids. And so that's what we did. And we're still doing that. But now because of the lockdown in India and the COVID crisis that's just out of hand there, we can't even do that anymore. So in lieu of that, I have been scratching my head. But that's been one way like that I've tried to help. And I think that if you think about it a little bit creatively, it doesn't have to be like some really big gesture. It can be little things like that, where you're not necessarily like the numbers aren't like large when you put it on a spreadsheet. It's not like, okay, I'm creating a 50% change in the state, but no, in some way you are helping. So that's one way. I think like you can create a platform, just create a platform. If you have the ability to, like I said, if you're good at coding, help find charities that need web designers, right? Like, for example, yeah, I joined this community called Art Girl Army, and it's on Facebook, but there's often a lot of women of color who can't afford to pay a lot for web design or can't afford to really get a fancy ad company to make them a logo, and I'll do it for less than $1,000. Like I was saying earlier, do things for free if you're passionate about them. It doesn't have to be that they have to value you or pay you. It's not that they don't value you, they just probably can't afford it, right? It's hard to find that, but it's out there. Like if you are aware of the problem, then that's already the first step. So it could just be a matter of even Googling, like just Google it. There's so many charities that need help. Obviously, some of them are scams, but you can figure that out. Like we're all intelligent women here, like no one's going to take us on a scam ride, right? Yeah, that's one way. I think even in your local community, if you go to local events, then you can learn about the women who aren't educated in your community or who need the help, or, because your community leaders are going to be talking about stuff like that. Find the countries, or anytime you see or hear about a place or a country where you hear that the women there need help, or there's a community there that needs help, just put it on your list and be like, the next time I have free time, I'm going to find an organization, be it on Instagram or online, and I'm going to hit them up and I'm going to say like, hey, can I help you in some way? These are my skills. Because that's what I'll do. But at this point, people will come to me and ask me for help. And I've made it a general rule that 20% of my annual work each year is going to definitely be work like that, helping and educating people and providing resources to women, especially who don't have that.
Thank you so much, Marian. That
No
really
worries.
direction. Thank you.
I'm gonna chuck some Instagram accounts in here that are really great women that are talking about important social issues.
While Marian is looking for that, if you guys have any final questions, feel free to speak up. This is like a discussion, very small group today, but I think that's a good part of it. We can all just talk.
Well, for Palak, I would say like at such a young age, you are so, ahead of your times, and I really feel happy to have you here. I mean, I was surprised, and I'm pleasantly surprised. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
Palak.
Yeah, I
It's
think
great
as
to
young
see so
people,
much
it's very.
confidence.
I think it's like as young people who have access to technology and so many resources these days, it's our part to like help out, host these conversations and everything. So I'm glad that this was helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. The clapping emojis. Yeah. Let me send some links for PM Doja if you guys want to check it out later on. Feel free to subscribe to our newsletter, reach out to us on our socials. We'll be more than happy to chat. And keep in mind.
I'm really.
Sorry,
go ahead, Palak,
Martin.
sorry. I'm actually interested to know what all the ladies here do. Tell me what all of you do in the chat if you can, or what you're interested in, or what your passions are, what you do for work. I want to know more. Awesome. Software engineer. That's great. Yeah, Emily, UI UX, what up? Oh, cool. I'll have to check that out, yo. Oh, nice. Yeah. Graphic design, creative struggles, eh? Has anyone found the transition during COVID? Has anyone had to transition their careers during COVID? I found myself having to do that a little bit as well. Just become a jack of all trades. I was telling Palak before, one of my side hustles has become translating into other languages since I'm multilingual. Mostly reality TV though, which is like a completely other end of the spectrum to creative direction and UI UX design. But yeah, it's been interesting.
I think about the translation. Are you thinking of like doing that long term? It's really interesting.
Yeah, I hope so. It's really hard with languages. I don't know if any of you, I mean, I feel like a lot of you are probably multilingual or bilingual. Funnily enough, it's for those of you of Indian origin, you'll probably laugh. It's actually translating to Hindi. Go figure, right? Like the Catholic girl does the Hindi translations. But what's funny about it is it's for it's for like a really hilarious reality show. I have like NDAs, but obviously none of you are going to say anything. It's just, it's a funny reality show about like marrying someone and moving to a different country. And like, I'm translating for this Indian family that's basically talking about how this white girl has to learn their Indian culture. And it's very oppressive. And pretty much what Rita was saying sucked about, it sucks about our upbringing, like all the oppressive female role model stuff, like, oh, you need to stay home and do the housework, and this is the woman's responsibilities, and you need to be young, and you need to be like subservient to your husband, and all of that junk. So it's kind of like, it's quite crazy. It's interesting. Like, it's a little traumatizing and triggering doing it, because I'm like, is this for real right now? Am I really, is she really, did he just really say that to her? Like, and there's like, scenes where they're talking to the man, like the young guy, and they're like, oh, are you excited for, this young lady, this Caucasian woman who's like come all this way from a different country? And he's like, yeah, anything that benefits me is going to be amazing. This is why we do what we do, ladies. So yeah, it's been hilarious and triggering is the answer. As I suppose being on a reality show probably is.
Yeah, so if that's about all for today, does anybody have any final comments, any questions last minute? Now's
Any
your
final?
chance.
Yeah, grill me. I thought this would be a really intense Q&A. It's actually been super chill. I really enjoyed this. Thank you. It has a really casual vibe, but it's also discussing the important things. Hits all the marks.
Yeah, very important. Mm-hmm. Okay. If not, I guess you all have Marian's socials. I feel like we would all love to connect with Marian and set up chats with her, because she's such a cool and interesting person to talk to.
Yeah, I'm really cool, guys. You really want to be my friend. But yeah, if you have any questions, if you have comments, or you have any like design solution problems, or how can I be more inclusive? Do you know of any places or yeah, hit me up. I'm more than happy to help. If I can answer your question, I will.
Thank you so much for coming, everyone. We'll also have a recording of this session, so if you do want to share it, if you want to come back and take a look, it'll be available on YouTube. And we'll see you all in like our next event, hopefully. Bye. Thank you, Marian.
No worries. You're welcome.